What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live and in living color from the Radio What studio. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Famous. It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you could have me. Oh yeah, I like to play for the people at your next event. You know, I like weddings and parties of all kinds. Video dance party karaoke jams have been what's going on lately. If you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous.
Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, May 23rd, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Trump declares places of worship essential and demands governors let them reopen. President Trump is calling for religious institutions to reopen amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Trump announced Friday that he would identify houses of worship, including, quote, churches, synagogues, and mosques, end quote, as, quote, essential places that provide essential services, end quote. He called on governors to allow those institutions to reopen and vowed to, quote, override the governors, end quote, if they do not, because, quote, in America, we need more prayer, not less, end quote. Just like reopening businesses, Trump does not have the power to override governors when it comes to letting places of worship start holding services again. Some churches had resisted closing down amid the pandemic and subsequently saw deadly coronavirus outbreaks spread among their members. This is according to C-SPAN and the New York Times. Number 2, 43 states broke unemployment records in April. 43 states recorded their highest unemployment rates since the government began tracking the data in 1939. Federal numbers released Friday reveal Nevada had the highest overall unemployment rate in the country at 28.2%, up from 3.6% in February before the pandemic shutdowns. The two other states to top 20% unemployment in April were Michigan and Hawaii at 22.7% and 22.3%, respectively. Nevada and Hawaii saw their unemployment numbers rise because of their reliance on tourism, while Michigan's job losses stem from automotive plant shutdowns. 7 states recorded unemployment below 10%, with Connecticut the lowest at only 7.9%. Those numbers should probably be higher due to the errors in the robustness of data collection, as well as how that data was classified, CNN notes. This is according to CNN and MarketWatch. Number 3, Biden apologizes for "you ain't black" comment. Former Vice President Joe Biden apologized for declaring that if, quote, you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or President Trump, you ain't black, end quote, during a Friday morning interview with Charlemagne the God on The Breakfast Club. Biden's comments were quickly criticized as racist and offensive. And by Friday afternoon, Biden acknowledged he, quote, shouldn't have been such a wise guy, end quote, and that, quote, perhaps I was much too cavalier, end quote, in a Friday afternoon call with black business leaders. Quote, I've never, ever taken the African community for granted, end quote. He continued, adding that, quote, no one should have to vote for any party based on their race, their religion, their background, end quote. This is according to CBS News and the BBC. Number 4, Fauci calls Moderna vaccine trial results quite promising. Dr. Anthony Fauci, head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, said Friday that the initial results from the Moderna's coronavirus vaccine trial are, quote, really quite promising, end quote. And that it remains, quote, conceivable, end quote, a vaccine could be available in some capacity by the end of this year. Fauci, one of the key members of the White House coronavirus task force, was still cautious, however, noting that a lot of things could hinder the vaccine's development between now and then. Dr. Carlos Del Rio, an Emory University professor of medicine working on the Moderna study, echoed Fauci, saying he's, quote, cautiously optimistic, end quote, about its success. Del Rio noted that the team is working at a, quote, mind-boggling, end quote, pace. This is according to NPR and CNBC. Number 5, 2 passengers survived fatal Pakistan plane crash. The death toll from a Pakistan International Airlines flight that crashed during its descent into Karachi on Friday rose to 97 on Saturday. 2 passengers survived the incident, and no fatalities have been reported among people on the ground in the densely populated neighborhood where the crash landing occurred, although 8 people were injured. One of the survivors, Mohammed Zubair, said the flight from Lahore was smooth until the descent, when the pilot came on the intercom to say the plane was experiencing engine trouble and the landing could be, quote, troublesome, end quote. The Airbus A320's black box, which includes the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, was found and is under review. This is according to the Associated Press and Reuters. Number 6, Hertz files for bankruptcy protection. Car rental firm Hertz on Friday became the latest company to file for bankruptcy protection as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Hertz, which was founded in 1918, has struggled since the pandemic severely reduced global travel, and its lenders were unwilling to grant it another extension on its auto lease debt payments past Friday's deadline, the Associated Press reports. By the end of March, the company will reportedly accrued more than $24 billion in debt and was unable to generate revenue after travel largely shut down. Around that time, Hertz laid off 12,000 workers and furloughed 4,000, cut vehicle acquisitions by 90%, and stopped all non-essential spending, but the moves proved too late. The company will continue to operate during the bankruptcy process. This is according to the Associated Press and Reuters. Number 7, Trump administration reportedly considered nuclear test. The Trump administration has discussed launching the United States' first nuclear weapons test since 1992 as a tactic in negotiations with China and Russia, the Washington Post reports. One administration official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said the conversation is still ongoing, while another person familiar with the situation said the White House, after some reportedly serious disagreements, has decided to take other measures in response to threats posed by Moscow and Beijing. The U.S. has accused the other 2 countries of conducting low-yield nuclear tests and is seeking trilateral deal to regulate their arsenals. Russia and China have both denied the assertions. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 8, D.C. now has the highest coronavirus positivity rate in the country. The Washington, D.C. metro area has the highest coronavirus positivity rate in the country. Dr. Deborah Birx said at the White House press briefing on Friday. The region includes both the nation's capital, Northern Virginia, and several counties in Maryland. Birx said that D.C. is followed in positivity rate by Baltimore, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Quote, these are the places where we have seen really a stalling or an increase of cases as in Minneapolis, end quote, she explained. The D.C. metro area specifically has a rate of infection 3 times higher than the areas directly surrounding it. Governors in Maryland and Virginia began easing restrictions in their states last Friday, while protesters gathered in Baltimore County on Friday to push for a faster reopening. This is according to NBC News and The Washington Post. Number 9, 538 women are running for Congress this year, breaking 2018's record. While the 2018 midterm election saw a historic number of women run for Congress, 2020 has already broken that record. Jen reports. In 2018, 529 women filed to run for the House or the Senate, according to Vox, with 117 ultimately elected or appointed. This year, some 538 female congressional candidates have filed their paperwork so far. Among them are 490 women vying for House seats, according to data from Rutgers University Center for American Women and Politics, CAWP, up from 476 in 2018. So far, 48 women have filed to run for Senate in 2020, just behind 2018's record of 53. Additionally, Jen notes that 195 of the women running for the House this year are on the Republican ticket, quote, far more than the previous high of 133 in the 2010 midterms, end quote. This is according to Jen and Vox. Number 10, Jerry Sloan, longtime Utah Jazz coach, dies at 78. Jerry Sloan, the Hall of Fame coach who propelled the Utah Jazz to 1,223 wins, died Friday at 78. The Jazz announced the news on Friday, saying Sloan had died of complications from Parkinson's disease and Lewy body dementia. His 23 seasons with the Jazz made him the winningest coach in the franchise's history and the third winningest coach in NBA history at the time of his retirement. While in Utah, Sloan led the Jazz to 20 postseason appearances. They twice made it to the NBA Finals, losing to the Chicago Bulls both times. Sloan, who also enjoyed a productive playing career, mainly with the Bulls, was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2009 and retired from the sideline in 2011. Quote, Jerry Sloan will always be synonymous with the Utah Jazz, end quote, the team said in a statement. This is according to NBA.com and The Week. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, May 23rd, 2020. Thank you for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to hear the stories of others or tell your own story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. I hope everybody's doing reasonably well. Drop me some comments. Let me know what you're up to in these days, in these trying times. I know we're all going to make it through. I feel it. I feel it in my bones. We're going to make it. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at Smarter What, and YouTube. Username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/Keys Dan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening.